Man, that was a fucking disaster. It took me 32 hours to finish this game, and boy wasn't that a roller coaster of a ride. The Last of Us Part 2 picks up where the first one left off and tells the story of Ellie set 5 years after the original events. We start off at Jackson, where Ellie is part of a peaceful community. A traumatizing event happening in Jackson leads Ellie to Seattle, and this is where we spend the most time in. In Seattle, you will come across two factions, the WLF, the Wolves, and the Seraphites, the Scars. The Wolves have taken over the city and they are armed to the teeth. They are highly trained and they even have dogs who could pick up your scent. This makes stealth combat with the Wolves quite nerve-wracking. I was playing in the hard difficulty and you cannot imagine the times I died because of a stupid dog picking up my trail. Therefore, there is less time for you to think of a strategy and you always have to be on the move. Bottles and bricks could distract the dogs, but it won't last for long. Wolves are highly trained, which means they are stronger as a group. Once they detect you, they will start surrounding you. Before you know it, someone is having a visual on you and they will start shooting at you. So the best way to fight the wolves is with aggressive stealth, if you know what I mean. Now, I love the fact that the game doesn't make it obvious whether you have to fight or to flee. You have to make that decision right then and there, and that makes the game that much exciting. Going prone and dodging are huge reliefs in this game, and this leads to quite interesting fight sequences. While close range combat was quite limiting in the first game, you can be creative with your punches with the inclusion of the dodge button. The most satisfying thing in this game, guys, is to charge at an enemy with a melee weapon. Man, that was amazing and brutal as you can imagine it would be. Naughty Dog hasn't shied away from showing you blood and gore in this game. I would say compared to the Wolves, Seraphites were much easier to fight because you have time to think of a strategy. Seraphites do carry firearms, but their main weapon of choice are melee weapons and bows and arrows. Now this makes it much easier to figure out your options as the combat is not as dynamic as with the Wolves. I cleared out most of the Seraphite groups without much of a hassle. Now don't get me wrong, these were not easy but required you to strategize, but unlike the Wolf combat, these strategies didn't fall through. The combat has gotten a massive upgrade from its predecessor as you have much more options when it comes to close range combat. I love the inclusion of the dodge button, which made the combat much more satisfying. The killing scenes were brutal and detailed. The new mechanics worked harmoniously and gave me a very satisfying combat experience. I give the combat a 9.8 out of 10 because it was near perfect. Now, unlike in the first game, the main antagonists are not the infected, but the humans. But when it comes to the infected, boy, there are thrilling sequences. This is hands down the scariest of the two games. The infected are much more aggressive in this one, especially clickers and bloaters. This game will put you on the edge of your seat, I tell you. That's what made the whole game for me. There are times when you can relax in the game and enjoy the scenery, but when shit hit the fan, boy, doesn't it. Apart from runners, stalkers, clickers, and bloaters, they have introduced a new breed of the infected called the shamblers. Shamblers are much easier to beat than the bloaters, and guys, the bloaters are quite aggressive in this game. They are really scary, much scarier than the first game, and they could really tear you apart. Now, I told you that the focus is on the humans in this game, but some of the most memorable moments in this game for me were infected encounters. Guys, if you think you are ready, believe me, you are not. Right? There's gonna be insane sequences and you will be pleasantly surprised. We already saw what stalkers could do in The Last of Us Part 1, but when it comes to Part 2, they are extra aggressive and they could do some serious damage to you. They were really annoying in the game and it was quite a challenge to overcome them. I loved the design of the infected. They all have gotten massive upgrades when it comes to appearances. The infected look more detailed and they look disturbing. The intense brutality in this game was genuinely upsetting. Every gunshot felt pronounced and every melee attack carried insanely real animations. I would say Naughty Dog has produced an extremely polished game that sets the bar so high up for the future games to come. When it comes to the details of this game, every other company should be taking notes because all in all, the design and details for this game deserve a 10 out of 10. When it comes to the difficulty settings of this game, it is quite different from the rest of the games. Customizing difficulty is a thing and you can spend some time personalizing the difficulty. Now for me, personalizing the difficulty felt like cheating, so I did not spend much time tweaking any of the settings. But if you decide to do so, you can customize things like how much resources are there in the world and how aggressive your enemies are, how aggressive your allies are, and such. One thing that I noticed was that for me, playing in hard difficulty was a sweet spot. Survival was too difficult and doesn't give you enough resources, and playing on normal actually gives you more than enough resources that you don't feel desperate when you're trying to craft an essential item. Playing on hard difficulty made the enemies essentially aggressive, and I felt appropriately desperate trying to craft items, but not too much that I would not be able to enjoy the story. So I recommend that for many of you, hard difficulty would be the go-to difficulty, but of course if you do feel like your experience requires tweaking, you can definitely do that as well. Let's talk about environmental puzzles and side quests. One thing which kind of annoyed me in the first game was the fact that sometimes solving the puzzles to find a way to go to the next area could be a bit of a chore and you get lost at times. In this game, such mindless loitering is mitigated by many ways. One, it is not difficult to see a glass that could be shattered or a little hole that you can prone through. In addition to that, sometimes the NPCs will give you clues as to how to traverse to the next area. This really reduced my time figuring out things, as getting lost is kind of annoying. Now don't get me wrong, I love the environmental puzzles, but in the first game it really got me annoyed because sometimes when the game showed me hints, I felt like there is no way I could have seen it myself. But traversal in this game is really refined. There are certain areas where you have to get really creative to navigate, which I really appreciated. Once you figure them out, you will really feel accomplished. Exploring will definitely pay off. This game has many notes and letters that you can read scattered all over the world. There is a lot of reading to do if you do decide to read them, of course. They reveal the fate of people who have lost their lives, and it is Naughty Dog's attempt to humanize the enemies. It's a nice touch. Some letters reveal a side story. Not all of the letters are important, and if you would like to skip past them, it won't affect your gameplay experience whatsoever. Some letters give you little hints as to what you can expect in certain areas. That was quite helpful at times. Safes are prevalent in the world, and some letters reveal the codes for these safes. These challenges are fun, and once you crack the code, the safes will provide you with a reasonable amount of resources. The code is not always obvious, and you would have to do some thinking to figure them out. I loved all of these challenges that the game provided me with. All in all, side missions deserve a 9 out of 10. I felt like they could have included some engaging side quests like optional areas that I can fight off additional enemies. Side quests, aka reading letters, was not very rewarding in this game and felt like an interesting touch but an okay experience. In the graphics department, now I'm no expert on graphics, but man, as a fan of games, I cannot say enough things on how impressive the graphics in this game are. I showed this to my friend who is not a gamer, and his immediate reaction was, man, that looks fucking real. If these developers could pull this off on a PS4, imagine what we could see on a PS5. This is the type of game which you would need like a 65-inch 4K TV or something to actually adore what you see in front of you. We start at Jackson, and the game gives you enough time to admire the breathtakingly impressive scenery. I lost count of the times I just stopped and stared at some places in the game. This is photo mode heaven right here. The lush greenery, snowy fields of Jackson would make anyone stop and stare. Amidst the intense battles, the game gives you enough downtime to enjoy the scenery. The expressions of characters are top notch. Not only the main characters, but the NPCs carry emotions at a level I have never seen in another game. When you strangle an enemy, the NPCs express fear and desperation. The element of surprise in the faces when they suddenly spot you, and the expressions when they cautiously approach you, are priceless. The graphics receive a 10 out of 10, while the scenery in Red Dead Redemption 2 might have looked a little more impressive than this, the details and the graphics on violence really did it for me. When it comes to the story, I cannot really go into details as this is a spoiler-free video. But let me tell you this. The first game was straightforward and I loved it. The second one will take you through numerous twists and turns. And the story was quite unconventional, and up until the last moment I was intrigued to find out what will happen. There is no single protagonist in this game. Naughty Dog openly said that this game is about the circle of violence and that nobody will emerge a righteous hero. We do play as Ellie, but the game tries to focus on the fact that there are no black and white characters, and even Ellie herself does things that are messed up. Since the game focuses more on anger, as a result, the story lacked heart that the first story came packed with. The story was bold, it was unconventional, and pretty far off from the formula of the original. I would like to say that unlike the side characters of the previous game, Naughty Dog has paid attention to the side characters much more. I cared for some NPCs but didn't care about the rest. Darkness is a constant in this game, but the game tries to make it a little lighter with the inclusion of cheerful flashbacks. I love the fact that the game will show you how different people perceive the world that they are living in an effort to show that everybody is bad in someone else's story, Naughty Dog has succeeded in bringing sequences to the game which reveal why the air-quote bad guys are not so bad and why the good guys might not be as good as we think they are. Of course, there is this controversy about the sexual orientations of the characters. Let's keep those aside. I mean, if Naughty Dog wanted to have more diversity, so be it. At times it felt like they are trying to push an agenda, but I didn't care about most of the romantic relationships and I wanted those parts to end because they were cringy as hell. But I enjoyed the overall story that they are trying to say. Many romantic relationships fell apart for me and I did not care. The ending was not exactly satisfying, but then again Naughty Dog in an interview claimed that not everyone will enjoy the story. They were pretty confident with what they were doing and they had expected the fans to divide. For me, although the ending is not what I wanted, it left things open for interpretation and I liked how the game left things for me. The story had pacing issues. The game will arrive at a cliffhanger and suddenly reset the pace to 0 and will take hours to build up again. Overall, the story gets an 8.5 out of 10 from me. It lacked the charm of the first game but tried to leave a statement with its bold storytelling. I know guys, I'm pretty late with the review, but this was my first experience doing a review for a game, and so please go easy on me in the comments section. Overall, The Last of Us Part 2 is the epitome of gameplay and graphics of this generation. The story was quite refreshing and Naughty Dog once again proves that they are the masters of single player games. My final score for The Last of Us Part 2 is a 9.5 out of 10. Alright guys, what did you think about The Last of Us Part 2? Please leave your spoiler-free comments in the comment section below. I will post another video talking everything about The Last of Us Part 2. We can dive deep into spoiler areas in the next video. I'll see you in that one.